Okay, so this time I want to talk about analysing the World of Logs files from an individual perspective. So a raid member who wants to have a look at the logs and use them to improve their personal performance, but isn't necessarily worried about how the raid did in general. The easiest way to access the log files is to go to our guild website, scroll down, and on the right hand side you can see a list of all of our recent logs. If you click on the one you're interested in, it will load up and you can see the main page there. You initially might want to have a look over here to see if you were ranked in this fight. You might also want to look down here at dispels and interrupts if that was a job that you were supposed to have been doing in the fight. Otherwise, you probably aren't very interested in that. Most of this information is general for the whole raid and you really don't need to look at it. You will want to go straight to Analyse though. Now initially we're looking at all of the players and for the whole raid, so we're going to start off by selecting just the attempt that we want to see, otherwise it's not going to give us much useful information. So select the boss you want and probably also select just one attempt. Okay, so the first thing we see here is damage done. Now you can have a look straight away and see how you fit in the overall scheme of things, but you probably want to be a little bit more specific than that. You can tick and untick people from the graph. So start by ticking yourself, and there's not much point comparing ranged with melee, for example, so you probably want to just compare people who are doing the same role as you and see how you compare with them. If your line follows a similar pattern, then that's all good. If there are any points where your line dips significantly below theirs, then you might want to worry about what you were doing then. Why was it they were able to keep on putting out high damage and you weren't? You will also want to have a look at the damage done by target, so you can double check if you were attacking the things you should have done. I'm using a different log here that shows a Magmor fight, because this one is one where there are ads which are supposed to be attacked, these lava parasites. You may notice that the graphs have now gone, and if you read what it says at the top, that's because I'm now using this at peak time, and you may have noticed that on my other video as well. So that just depends what time of day you are using World of Logs, but for this particular section it probably doesn't matter too much. So again, you want to select yourself. So you can see what you attacked the most and double check it was what you were supposed to be attacking. So if in this particular fight, if you're ranged, you want to check that you were attacking the parasites, and on the other hand, if you are a melee, you want to be checking that you did not attack the parasites. From a healing perspective, you can see the exact same thing by going to healing done. Again, you want to compare just the other healers, and if you're a raid healer, for example, you might not want to compare your tank healer in that, or you might, depending on the fight. Again, you've got the exact same information there. If you want to look at who you were healing, you can change to having a look by target. You'll want to change source to yourself. Otherwise you're looking at all of the healers in the raid. So now what you can see is specifically how much healing you did to certain players, and again if you have a look on the graph, you can see the healing you did at what time as well as to who. Okay, now if we go back to damage done, we probably want to look at by spell. This time we want to use this menu to select just your character to look at, otherwise there's going to be too much information on there. So here you can see a list of all of your spells and how much damage you did with them. And again, you can tick and untick them from your graph. So if you want to compare, say, 2 spells and how much damage you did with them, or if you want to compare the uptime of your dots, for example, or see when you cast your cooldowns. Have a look and see maybe if you could have squeezed them in more times into the fight, for example. For healing done, again, it's very similar. Have a look by spell, select yourself. And you can click on and off the spells that you are interested in, see which ones you used the most, and see when you were using certain spells. Damage taken you're definitely going to want to look at. Leave it by target. And you can see who took the most damage. And again, you can add people to the chart. So you again want to compare your damage taken with those of people standing near you. So if you were in a group of people assigned to stay together, for example, then you want to compare your data with the people who are supposed to be standing near you, and you want to make sure that it looks roughly the same. If you are sticking out over the top at all, then you want to question why and make sure that you don't in the future. Damage taken by spell is another very useful section to look at, because it can tell you if you were standing in things that you shouldn't have been. So again, you can see a list here of the abilities that damaged you, and you want to have a look for your particular boss fight. You should know the names of the abilities that you were supposed to be avoiding, and you should check to see if they're on this list, and if they are, how much, and if you have a look on the graph as well to see when that you were taking damage from them. Any fight that involves any kind of debuff you get that causes AoE to your raid members would mean you want to probably look at the friendly fire. If you start off by source, you can see who caused the most damage to friendly raid members. By target allows you to actually see what you did. So if you select it by target and then select yourself, you can see who you managed to damage and when. Similarly, hostile healing, if you have a fight with a mechanic that makes you end up healing the boss. Now there is one more aspect that you might want to look at if you are a DPS. If you go to players, find yourself, okay, we still have that one attempt selected here. This is some general information. These tabs are only going to show you the same information that we already looked at just in a table form where you can see all the actual numbers rather than in the graph form. It's exactly the same information. The bit that you might want to look at though is buffs gained and buffs cast. If you use the little hash sign and click that, it will come up with a graph at the top which shows your raid DPS and your damage done, and every one of these you can click to add. So these are debuffs cast on the boss. So if you have a debuff that's supposed to be up all the time, for example, you can have a look at this, and the green bar at the bottom will show you when you used that ability. And you can also compare it with the timings of the DPS as well. So for example, if I have a look at Time Warp, okay, I want to see that my damage increased when Time Warp was up. Okay, and you can do the same for any other cooldowns that you might have for your class that you used. Damage check that you used them as often as you could, so I can have a look at Combustion here, which I used twice, and think maybe I should have used those more often. Which aspects you look at here is really going to depend very much on your class, but if you are a DPS or a tank, this is definitely going to be very useful. As a healer, it's slightly less useful because this will always show the DPS and the damage done. It doesn't show the healing, so it's less useful, but you still might find a use for it.